The scapegoat becomes the hero. The Minnesota Vikings defeat the Arizona Cardinals in a thrilling 23-22 football game in which the man who fumbled twice, coughed it up once, scores the game-winning touchdown. Aaron Jones. Fumble. Vikings recover. Fumbles again. Cardinals recover. Missed field goal. Gets benched. Cam Akers, Ty Chandler get the reps. Aaron Jones drops a touchdown pass that would put the Minnesota Vikings in front. Aaron Jones on the sidelines during the game-winning drive by the Vikings catches the game-winning touchdown pass from Sam Darnold. And you really feel for Aaron Jones because all you see throughout the media landscape and from players is how adored Aaron Jones is in the locker room. You hear from Aaron Rodgers how much he loves Aaron Jones. You hear Vikings players talk about how much they love Aaron Jones. And, of course, if the Minnesota Vikings didn't win today, we wouldn't be talking about how adored Aaron Jones is right now. We'd be talking about how this was the worst game of his career. 2 fumbles, a drop touchdown pass, a benching, but he caught the game-winning easy touchdown pass from Sam Darnold and a thrilling come-from-behind victory over the Arizona Cardinals. There is so much to react to and so much to discuss after the Vikings won this game. One, the first half. Oh, what an ugly first half that was. Halftime score, all field goals. Was it 9-6? I think it was. Field goal here, field goal there. The Minnesota Vikings were fortunate to even be in the game at halftime because at halftime, the Minnesota Vikings only ran 20 plays. And the Minnesota Vikings defense was on the field for most of the first half. And it says right here by Kevin Seifert, he says, Cardinals doing the Vikings all kinds of favors. Kevin Seifert says, in the red zone. Played for a field goal once again. It's 9-6 at halftime, and it feels like the Cardinals should be much further ahead. They've run 2 times as many plays, 40-20, and have had the ball for 18 minutes and 34 seconds out of a possible 30 minutes. So the Arizona Cardinals, without a doubt, controlled the first half. They were suffocating the Minnesota Vikings offensive line. They were blowing it up and creaming Sam Darnold. And Darnold wasn't getting rid of the ball quick enough. And the first half offense just was not a pretty sight to behold. And even in the third quarter, it was not a pretty sight to behold. The Minnesota Vikings were down 19-6 in the fourth quarter. And they came back to win 23-22. And this was an impressive come-from-behind victory because the Minnesota Vikings in the fourth quarter had to score on practically every single possession because there's no more room for error. There's no more room for error. When you're down 19-6, the margin for error is so slim at that point because at this point you need 2 touchdowns to even take a lead. So in order to do that, you need to be on all cylinders. And the Minnesota Vikings were. And that was in large part because of Sam Darnold. Darnold was throwing absolute dimes in the fourth quarter. He was threading the needle to Justin Jefferson and to Jordan Addison. He had a throw to Jefferson where both defenders were diving after the ball left and right. Even Jefferson made a sensational play in coming back for the ball because if he doesn't do that, that's an interception. And then he had another throw to Addison that went over the outstretched arm of the linebacker towards the sideline. And that might have been, it was a big play. And it might have been a 26-yard catch, Addison's longest catch of the. Oh no, he had a big catch at the end of the game. That was longer than that. But anyway, it was a big catch, a spectacular throw, and Sam Darnold was clicking on every single cylinder, and it was an impressive come from behind victory. I mentioned that the Vikings were down 19-6 in the fourth quarter. It was at the end of the third quarter. They're down 19-6 at the end of the third quarter, and they came back and won that football game because they scored 10 points in the fourth quarter, 7 points in the third quarter. And my opinion throughout this game was the Vikings are struggling. They are shooting themselves in the foot. They are putting together plays where they're not going to be able to overcome this because I was thinking about the plays. They gave up a big 3rd and 12 play against the Arizona Cardinals on the drive that they kicked a field goal to go up by 6. They had the pass interference by the guy who replaced Stephon Gilmore, put the Cardinals in great position. They had the touchdown given up by the guy that replaced Stephon Gilmore. He was getting torched by Marvin Harrison Jr. and the Arizona Cardinals offense. They were attacking him, and they were searching him out because he was the weakest link on the Minnesota Vikings defense. And what the Minnesota Vikings offense overcame in the fourth quarter was nothing short of a miracle because they were outstanding. And the odds would show that the Arizona Cardinals had a great chance to win that game. I'm pulling up the odds on ESPN right now. And it was 19-16. The Arizona Cardinals had the ball 2nd and 3 at the Vikings 14-yard line. And this is the drive where they're just doing anything that they want to against the Vikings. They were running the ball, play action, Kyler Murray, James Conner, pounding the ball up the middle. James Conner couldn't get tackled. The Vikings defense was exhausted because they had been on the field for most of the game. And they had a 92.5% chance of winning according to ESPN's win probability chart. 2nd and 3 at the Vikings 14-yard line. And then the Vikings are given a gift by the officials when they called a false start instead of an encroachment on Tillery. And then the very next play, Kyler Murray gives the Vikings another gift and has an intentional grounding penalty, which means the Arizona Cardinals need to settle for a field goal. And this is a big game for the Cardinals because the Jets just lost to the Seattle Seahawks. And the Seahawks are in first place in that division, which means the Arizona Cardinals need to go in stride with the Seahawks. They want and desperately need to win games down the stretch. So they were all in on this game. This wasn't some meaningless game against the Titans or the Bears. Or the Cardinals are legit seeking a playoff spot in their division. 92.5% chance to win. A few things break the Minnesota Vikings' direction by a call, by a penalty by Kyler Murray, and somehow the Minnesota Vikings overcome the odds and win this football game. And I just want to continue to touch on what Sam Darnold did. 21 for 31, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a passer rating of 111.6. And let's just compare that to another quarterback in the NFL on the same Sunday. Okay, let's look at this. Look at this. Kirk Cousins, 24 for 39, 245 yards, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a 40 passer rating. Sam Darnold has been the better quarterback than Kirk Cousins this season. The Atlanta Falcons are 6-6. The Vikings are 10-2. How can you argue against Sam Darnold being a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins in the 2024 season? It's frankly not even close. And Kirk Cousins took the money. Good for him. And I like Kirk Cousins. He's a strong man of faith. I like the guy. But a little bit of me is excited to see him failing in Atlanta because he could have stayed in Minnesota. I didn't predict him to stay, but he could have stayed in Minnesota and signed a 2-year contract. Takes the money, goes to Atlanta, and seems like they're going to want to move off of him after this season based on the numbers and production that he is putting up for the Atlanta Falcons. Sam Darnold is outperforming Kirk Cousins. A 111 passer rating, a fourth quarter comeback, an impressive array of throws to Addison and Hawkinson and Jefferson that were tight windows. Overcame the odds of Aaron Jones dropping touchdowns, Aaron Jones fumbling, scoring 6 points at halftime, and he leads the Minnesota Vikings down by 13 points at the end of the third quarter, near the end of the third quarter. And the Vikings came back to win that football game. We start, when things like this start happening, you start diving into another conversation of, is this setting up for a special season for the Minnesota Vikings? Because things like this don't happen often. They're 10-2. They have a home game versus the Falcons next. They have a home game versus the Bears next. And it's a special season. It's an awesome season. There's a lot to build off of for next year. But what this season is ultimately going to boil down to is how the Vikings perform in the playoffs. Can they win a playoff game? So I'm not going to say whether or not this is a special season yet. The regular season's been special. 2 years ago, the regular season was special. 13-4, all these one-score victories. So far this year, 10-2. Darnold's performing better than he ever has in his career. The Vikings defense has been amazing besides 2 games this year versus 2 bright and brilliant offensive coordinators and Sean McVay and Ben Johnson. And they're 10-2. Are they going to win the Super Bowl? Probably not. But at this point, you can't help but deny that there is something special happening for the Minnesota Vikings. Shaq Griffin picks off Kyler Murray. Vikings were down 19-6 late in the third quarter, and they win 23-22. There's another thing that I wanted to touch on in this game, and that is the play of the Minnesota Vikings defense. The Minnesota Vikings defense were hanging on by the grits of their teeth because they had been on the field for a majority of this game. And on that last possession, when they needed to hold the Cardinals to a field goal, they were able to do it. But I want to touch on a bigger point, and I want to give a PSA. This is to all defenders that are in the National Football League. Do not celebrate an incomplete pass until you know the NFL official has not thrown the flag. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. The guy who replaced Stephon Gilmore. Moreau celebrates an incomplete pass. Fabian Moreau. Fabio. And then the official throws the flag. Don't celebrate too early. That's the most annoying thing in the NFL. When players celebrate an incomplete pass. And then you see the yellow flag. Can you just look around, wait, and see? Or maybe a little pump fist. Don't get overly excited. Because then when that flag comes in, it just deflates the fan base even more. So that's my PSA for Minnesota Vikings defenders and NFL defenders everywhere. Do not jump the gun and celebrate a defensive play too early, because then the NFL is going to throw the flag and then it's like, ah. Another point to be made about this game. and this came from Peter Schrager, and I agree with it 100%. Davis and Olsen, the play-by-play and the color commentator of this football game, are so good. And their games they're getting are even better. Another nail-biter. Greg Olsen is the best color commentator there is in the NFL. Better than Chris Collingsworth. Better than anything CBS has with Tony Romo. Better than Tom Brady. Better than anybody else on Fox. Greg Olsen is as smooth and as concise and as clear as anybody right now doing color commentary in the NFL. And I don't even think it's close. Tom Brady took the number one spot from Greg Olsen because he's Tom Brady. He's going to do that to anybody. But Greg Olsen is head and shoulders, shout out Troy Polamalu, ahead of any other color commentator the NFL has right now. And the Minnesota Vikings were fortunate to have him in this football game as the color commentator. I think one more point to make about this game. Kevin O'Connell. First half, 6 points. Second half, the Vikings score 17 points. 6 plus 17 is 23. The Vikings scored 23 points. And even though things were disastrous, and things are going to be disastrous at times in the NFL. You know, not every single possession or every single game is going to look fluid and perfect like the Vikings did in the first few weeks of the season. When they beat the Giants 28-6, not everything's going to look like that. And you've got to make adjustments. And the Minnesota Vikings made their adjustments. They figured out how to give Sam Darnold some more time, and he found the holes in the secondary and put the ball into Jefferson and Addison's hands. I don't know what Kevin O'Connell did, if it was just a pep speech or an adjustment, but to bench Aaron Jones and then to put him back in at the end of the game for the game-winning touchdown pass, I think it is amazing coaching. Because a player that is so down on himself, a guy that is already has his hands in his face, a towel over his head, catches the game-winning touchdown pass, gets those cheers and high fives, slap hands from his teammates, I think was huge for the confidence of Aaron Jones moving forward after this game. So, Sam Darnold, Minnesota Vikings, 10-2, led by Kevin O'Connell, who is going to have a massive contract extension soon. And for those questioning Kevin O'Connell's coaching, Sam Darnold, 10-2. What else do you need to know? What other statistic needs to be thrown at you for you to not doubt the ability of Kevin O'Connell as a head coach in the National Football League? Up until the end of the game, the highlight of the Vikings game was that in U.S. Bank Stadium, they showed Kirk Cousins throwing a pick on the big board. The crowd was silent out of the game. They had nothing to cheer for. And then the fourth quarter happened. Darnold delivered. O'Connell delivered. And the Vikings got a stop when they needed one. A come-from-behind victory. Darnold's first of the season. But not his first ceiling drive of the season. Because you think about Darnold's ceiling drives. He had one against the Bears last week. A game-sealing drive. He had a game-sealing drive versus Jacksonville. A game-sealing drive versus Green Bay. New York. San Francisco. Darnold has been Mr. Clutch in the fourth quarter this season. And the Minnesota Vikings are right on the heels of the Detroit Lions for first in the NFC North, and the Lions and Packers play each other next week, which is only good for the Vikings. One of those teams are going to lose, allegedly, unless they end in a tie. The Green Bay Packers are on the heels of the Vikings, and the Detroit Lions are an inch ahead of the Vikings. That's a win-win. So if the Vikings keep rolling, they could be tied for first in the NFC North next week. Thank you for making this podcast a part of your day. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Hit that subscribe button right there. I appreciate you.